We guess got a few. I want to open it up to members. Let me just raise one other geography, which is the Middle East, because again, you were in the kingdom recently. Saudi, lots of reports about Saudi interest in security assurances. Lots of talk about Saudi Arabia potentially joining the Abraham Accords, normalizing relations with Israel. Where does that stand? And could you see yourself inviting the Crown Prince to Washington, despite our historic differences and President Biden's differences, simply because it's a necessary means to an end, which is a closer U.S.-Saudi relationship and a formal Saudi-Israeli relationship?
So, Richard, I think when it comes to that relationship, where it's going, and how potential normalization fits in, start from the premise that we've had a decades-long relationship grounded in security, grounded in energy, and then in more recent years, grounded in dealing with terrorism. But now we see all sorts of new potential that goes to the dynamic of regional integration in the Middle East, with Saudi Arabia potentially in the middle of it, a de-escalation of conflict and crisis, with one notable exception, Iran, and as well, the possibility to partner on game-changing issues and challenges, for example, with Saudi Arabia on everything from developing and meeting the incredible thirst around the world for quality infrastructure, to dealing with new communications networks going forward, including things like open radio access networks, where we're actually working with the Saudis. It's a long way of saying that along with the foundational partnership that we've had, there are new horizons that are clear. And of course, we have a big stake. We came in with maybe the worst humanitarian situation in the world, being in Yemen, working to end that war. So there's also a dynamic in place whereby both Saudi Arabia and Israel, of course, are interested in the prospect of normalization. It is incredibly challenging, hard, not something that can happen overnight, but it's also a real prospect, and one that we're working on because, as you've alluded to, both the Saudis and Israelis are looking for us to play a particular role in that effort. We're very much engaged in it, and as I said, it's a challenging road, but it's certainly one that's possible.
Don't you have an added problem, though, which is just as you're trying to do this, and perhaps bring the Saudis closer to the Israelis, it can't take place without a context, in this case, the Israeli-Palestinian relationship, which I've been watching it for 40 plus years, and it seems to me not that far from blowing. You're seeing now the considerable expansion of settlements, considerable expansion of violence, a real absence of centralized Palestinian authority, the most right-wing government we've seen in Israeli history. If we want to have a normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel, it seems to me part of associated with that has got to be a degree of calm with Israelis and Palestinians. It seems to me we're on the verge of anything but that. Shouldn't we be doing more? Or couldn't we be doing more to address this? To keep open, in particular, to keep open the possibility, the calm things, and keep open a two-state possibility?
Yeah. In short, I agree with you. And
that's no fun.
Sorry. We've told our friends and allies in Israel that if there's a fire burning in their backyard, it's going to be a lot tougher, if not impossible, to actually both deepen the existing agreements as well as to expand them to include potentially Saudi Arabia. And I actually had this conversation just yesterday with my Israeli counterpart. It's a conversation I've had with the Prime Minister on a number of occasions. It's also, at least in our judgment as Israel's closest friend and ally, profoundly not in Israel's interest for this to happen, both because of the added degree of difficulty that this presents for pursuing normalization agreements or deepening them, but also because of the practical consequences. If, just to cite one example, if Israel were to find itself either by intent or by accident responsible for the West Bank with 3 million Palestinians and 500,000+ settlers, what is that going to mean in terms of the allocation of resources, including security resources, that Israel otherwise needs to be concerned about when it comes to Gaza, when it comes to Lebanon, when it comes to Iran. It doesn't really add up. So on both of those dimensions. And then, of course, there is the question of the future for the Palestinian people, something that we care deeply about. And we continue to believe strongly that two states is the way forward. As distant as that seems, it's usually important to at least keep a horizon of hope for people who don't have a lot. And in the meantime, to at least try to better their lives day in, day out. We are working on this. We've brought people together, Arabs, Israelis, Palestinians in Aqaba and Sharm el-Sheikh, to try to find a way forward to, in the first instance, de-escalate some of these tensions, to have both sides refrain from taking actions that are simply going to add fuel to the fire. It's an ongoing process. We've had some success, particularly during the holiday season over Easter, Passover, Ramadan. Now, however, we've seen steps taken, including on settlements, that are moving in the opposite direction.